I have literally made this video about 10 times now, so I'm just going to start by introducing myself. My name is Shannon. I'm 21 years old, and I'm making this video because I have something I want to talk about, and I feel it's not, I feel it's just simply not healthy anymore to keep this a secret. And I have slowly shared this a little bit, but I feel like it's the first time that I've really wanted to very clearly say this, and what I want to say is simply that I am Muslim. Now, most people that have me on Facebook or know me in real life already know this about me, but I have never simply or very clearly, broadcasted or announced that I am Muslim, but most people do know this about me, although there are still quite a lot of people in my life that do not know that, including my parents. I have been Muslim as of today, since today is June 14th. I have been Muslim one whole year as of today. So I haven't really planned how I'm going to make this video, because every time I try to plan it, it doesn't work out and I get very nervous with the camera. So I knew that I was going to have a hard time with this, so what I wanted to do was I posted a status on Facebook saying that I was going to talk about it and make a video, and asked if any of you guys had any questions. So I'm going to go ahead and start answering some questions so that I can get a little bit more comfortable and go ahead and get this conversation a bit started. So the first question was, did you find it hard to find other Muslims in your area? Yes. As far as I know, I am the only Muslim in my area. Now, I did meet somebody who told me that there was one family here, but I've never seen them, nor have I been able to contact them. I have tried to ask somebody if they could put me in contact, and they lost their phone number. So as far as I know, I am the only Muslim in my area. But I will say that I do live about an hour away from the Muslim community. Actually, it's the Muslim community that I go to is the one in Raleigh. Most of you guys know this as the Chapel Hill shooting that happened a few months back ago. That mosque is the one that I usually attend. And I will say that everybody there has been very welcoming, and so I did find a lot of Muslims, but they are quite far from me. I have to usually drive about an hour away, so I don't mind this though to drive, but I really do wish that there were other Muslims at my school. Next question was, do you feel like Islam stops you in any way, socially or professionally? I wouldn't say that it stops me, but I would definitely say that it has changed how I approach some things. The only thing I would say maybe it stops me is professionally. I do feel very shy in my area to wear the hijab. I usually try to wear a hat or something like this because I usually don't like to go out like this. Just because I am the only one in my area, and the area that I live in is actually very country, so people usually don't see people of other ethnics or religions. I live in a predominantly white, Mexican, or black area, so to see anything other than a Baptist or a Catholic, it's really weird actually here. So professionally, when I try to apply for a job wearing hijab, it definitely gives me a hard time. But I would say that, in bigger cities, because I live in North Carolina, bigger cities, they're definitely much more accepting, but so far I haven't had too many problems. I just kind of keep things to myself, and I just sort of change how I dress where I go. Some places I wear a hat, some places I do wear the hijab. But socially, I think it has made it a little bit strange, because sometimes I have to explain why I can't shake a man's hand, or why I stop certain men from hugging me, because sometimes I haven't seen people in so long, and they run into me again and they're like, "Oh my God, Shannon," and they try to hug me, and I have to stop them, and they're like, "What's the matter?" and I have to stop and explain myself. So that socially it hasn't stopped me, but it's definitely changed how I approach certain things, even in sports. Because I used to do martial arts. If I go and do something like that now, I would not wear a sleeveless shirt, even though I never felt comfortable doing that, and I very rarely ever did do that. But now I kind of have to explain in certain places, like, hey, I wear this because of this, and people are usually very cool with it, but it's just that I do find myself explaining things a lot more than what I used to. The next question was, what is the one thing that strikes you about Islam, and what is the biggest misconception people have about Islam? There were a lot of things that struck me about Islam, and I think there are a lot of misconceptions. For me, who came from a sort of, I was Christian most of my life, but for me, for someone who came from a Christian background, was the rights that women had. I know a lot of people look at the hijab as one thing and think that that's very oppressive. And if you look at the Bible or the Torah or a lot of other religions, actually, women are taught to cover up. So for me, this was a very easy thing to accept, but of course you have to deal with that sort of misconception, and you have to show people, you know, in their Bible or their Torah or whatever, like, hey, this is in your religion as well. But I find myself, especially with women's rights, trying to explain why some things are acceptable. For me, what was most striking was the soulfulness of Islam, to be very simple in my explanation. I wanted, when I looked into Islam a few years ago, I was looking for a logic, because I feel that logic is something that is extremely important. If you know, if you can't find something that's going to confirm your faith will eventually die. So I did really appreciate the logic that was in Islam that I did not find in other religions, including even Christianity. Even though I felt that it does have a lot of truth, I felt like it did contradict itself in a lot of places. So for me, that was very important. And I think the biggest misconception, other than the women's rights, I don't know. I find that there are just simply a lot, you know, even when I first heard about Islam, you know, maybe I was 11 or maybe even younger. What I heard about Islam was that all men had 5 wives, and you know, they prayed to this Allah God in the middle of Saudi Arabia that lived in a black box. And of course, you know, if you take even just 10 minutes to look on the internet, you can find that this is simply not true. So honestly, the whole thing that I think is very different about and biggest misconception about Islam is simply that you have to really separate Islam from Arabic culture, because that is what really is the biggest difference. And even me, sometimes I find myself looking at culture, and you know, I'm like, why is it like this? And you know, someone has to explain to me, hey, this isn't Islam, and they show me some ayahs, or ayahs are, for those who don't know, it's like a verse. So people do have to show me some ayahs and say like, hey, it's supposed to be like this. And so I feel that there are still a lot of misconceptions, but I think thankfully people are slowly becoming more comfortable and talking about this, and the internet is really a great place to find out more about this. Next question was, how do you feel after accepting Islam, and how are you learning about it to grow internally? I feel, after accepting Islam, I feel that for me personally, other than the simple fact that you feel very, you feel very, how can I say it other than clean inside? You know, I remember feeling euphorium. I remember feeling, after I converted, taking my Shahada, so much energy and very lighthearted. I felt like, I just felt like I had been given something new inside, and there was a sort of peace and serenity that was inside me. And I feel that this has only continued to grow. But as far as growing internally, I feel that Islam is like drinking water. You have to do this every day, but the only question is just simply, how can I do this better and better? And what I mean by that is, sometimes I feel like I've learned so much about this religion, and then just when I start to feel like I've learned something or that I know so much, I find that Islam continuously humbles me by showing me, hey, you don't actually know anything. There's still so much out there to learn. I feel that no matter how much I learn about this religion, there's always going to be something new to learn. And that for me, for someone who really loves and enjoys learning about Allah and just learning in general, this is something that definitely does help me to grow spiritually. I really appreciate the fact that there's never an end to how much you can learn in this religion. The next question was, looking back, what would be one thing that you see so odd and makes you go say, Alhamdulillah, I found Islam and understand it? I was not really sure what this person meant, so I asked, what did you mean? And for example, like having a boyfriend before marriage, drinking, different ways of contacting to Allah, the list goes on, you choose. I kind of gave this question a lot of thought, and I still don't know how to answer this. There were a lot of things in my life that really made me, say Alhamdulillah that I found Islam. One of them being that I would say I really feel I have good friends in my life now. I never really had good friends in my life before. They were always people wanting me to go out and drink or party or go out with guys and things like. And I was never really into that. So I found myself staying by myself for a long time, and I really did not have very many friends growing up. And now I found that I'm really in a very good environment. I feel comfortable when I go out with people because I'm not afraid if I go out with one of my girlfriends now that if I go somewhere with them, oh, are they gonna, bring a boy along and not tell me about it, or they're gonna wanna go to a bar and get drunk and then I'm stuck with them drunk and I don't know what to do, things like this. I would say though, the thing that makes me feel most connected with Allah would be, for me it was actually, and it's a bit strange that I'm saying this because I still have a hard time with it, I really appreciate the 5 prayers a day. I have a hard time with this because, especially because my family's not Muslim, so sometimes I don't feel comfortable to pray. And because of that, if they're walking around or something, sometimes I don't enjoy it fully. But I would say the Quran was one way that I really felt connected with Allah. When I especially like to listen to it recited. Even though I don't speak Arabic, what I do is I go on YouTube and I listen to it recited, and it has like the translations at the very bottom. And when you hear the Quran, it has I don't know how to say it other than simply that it has a life to it, a life of its own. And when you read it, in your own language and you understand it with the sound, you feel so much amazing. I've actually, I did not really get attached to the Quran and start listening to it until actually maybe 2-3 months ago. I started really listening to it a lot, and I found that this really has settled me down a lot. Sometimes I would get a bit depressed or angry or something, and this really helps me calm down. It also very much helps me when I'm studying. So I find that the Quran is definitely a way that I learn a lot and I feel connected with Allah. How about, did you ever think you would be helping others on their journey as you are now? Actually, I did have the opportunity to help someone with Islam and becoming Muslim. I don't really want to say that I was the reason behind this, because this person was actually very interested in Islam already when I met them. But what I did was, this person, I met her actually not long after I became Muslim. We were at a mutual place, and I started talking to her because I was the only person. I was by myself, so I started talking to her, and she asked me what was my background, because she was like, are you Arab or what? And we started talking about it, and she's like, are you Muslim? And I said, yeah. So we started talking about it a bit, and we started becoming friends. And what I found out through this girl was that she was already thinking about Islam, but she had not taken the decision to become Muslim. maybe almost a year later, well, not even quite that long, actually, she just took her Shahada back in February. We sort of talked about it a lot, and I remember she was talking about a lot of fears that went through her, and a lot of things that I went through myself, you know, especially when you come from a Christian religion. If anybody came from a Christian religion before converting to Islam, or any other religion for that matter, you're really taught from a young age that the only way to go to heaven is by believing that Jesus was the Son of God, or was God, depending upon your branch of Christianity. And believing that Jesus died for you was the only way that you'll go to heaven. And letting go of this is definitely a big thing. And especially for me, not only that, I felt like I was leaving the religion of my parents, and that was definitely a hard one for me to swallow. So I got lucky meeting this girl. You know, she was I kind of tried to help her by just sharing my experience, you know, what I'd learned, how I sort of got through those fears and those problems, and I tried to introduce her to Muslims that were a bit better than myself, you know, more religious, knew more about the religion, because I sometimes she would ask me questions and I would be able to give her an answer, but I could not explain why or how. Just that was the answer that I was given, and I did not know enough at that time, and even now I still don't know how to give a very good explanation for certain Islamic questions. So I tried to sort of direct her to people who were more educated in the religion than I was, and alhamdulillah, she became Muslim back in February, and I was very happy that I got to see that and be that person for her, because I remember how hard it was trying to find Islam by myself. It was very difficult, and there were times when I wished that I would have just had somebody to sit besides me that was Muslim and kind of, you know, had converted and understood what I was going through. So I don't know that I helped her a lot. She said that I was very helpful, but I don't know how much of a help that I truly was, but I'm still very proud to this day that I was able to, if nothing else, just, you know, be a small encouragement for her. Next question was, hold on. This person wrote, "MashaAllah, that's a great idea, Shannon, for the video. My question is, how has Islam changed your thoughts about general things around you and your life in general?" In general, I think it's just simply, again, it's made me calmer. I feel that I've always had a bit of a temper. Not a bad temper, but just a lot of anger inside me. And I feel that it's definitely calmed me down a little bit. The way I talk to my parents is one thing that's definitely a big change. I was always, my parents would say that I was a good child and everything, and I wasn't really rebellious or anything like that. A bit sassy, but I wasn't that troubled teenager, but I remember I would argue with my parents, and I would scream at them, and, you know, if they yelled at me, and I would yell back, and I would do things like this. So now alhamdulillah, I don't really do this anymore. Every now and then I do find myself losing my temper, and I say something very small, but for the most part I don't say anything anymore. I just, so my respect for them has definitely changed. My respect for myself has changed a lot. I was always really respectful in how I dressed. I was always very shy about things like that. So for me, how I dressed has not really changed that much. The only thing is that maybe my jeans are not as tight as what they used to be, but and I cover my hair. But other than that, the only thing, my wardrobe has not changed dramatically. But I do feel that there is a much more sense of respect for myself, and I feel. Actually, one of the things that was the greatest thing that changed about my thoughts after becoming Muslim was that I no longer actually mind to get married or have children. And this might sound strange for some people, but I was always very scared to get married and have kids, especially having kids. I thought that, you know, even from a young age, I was like, oh, I don't want to get married, I don't want to have kids. I might get married, but definitely no kids was my thing. I never felt that I would be good enough to have children, but I thought, oh, maybe I will find someone that I don't mind as a husband, but I I always felt like I was not good enough to be anyone's mother, and I think that that was a really big thing for me. That was something I was very dead set on, that I did not want children. And after I became Muslim, I suddenly started seeing a change in myself, especially for my amount of respect for myself. And also, I started seeing a lot of families, especially there was this one family in particular who I'm very good friends with. I really watch this girl and her family and how they treat each other, and sometimes I'm a bit jealous of it, but in a good way, not in a an angry way or anything. And I watch how they interact with each other, and how, especially the parents, how they raised their children and things like this. And I started thinking, like, yeah, this is, how Muslims are supposed to raise their children and their families, and how they're supposed to be, married, and so on and so forth. And after I became Muslim, I found that my patience for children, I was someone who did not like kids, and suddenly I find that I really love kids. I find that all of a sudden I'm playing with them, and, I was like, why is it I suddenly, after, almost 22 years, find myself liking kids? I feel that Islam has shown me how to deal with children, have patience and love for them. It's definitely, again, calmed me down so much, and it's only now that I feel like I'm worthy to be someone's mom, and it's actually something I give a lot of thought. I find myself continuously thinking, how do I want to raise my children? What kind of wife do I want to be? What kind of husband do I want? So, and this was something that I never gave a lot of thought before, but now this is something that's I feel that I definitely can do, and I feel that I would do very well, and something I look forward to in my life. Last question was, after accepting Islam, have you or have your interactions with your family, close friends changed a lot? I already actually answered this question, so I'm sorry, but again, yeah, the way I talk with my parents has definitely changed. The friends, again, have definitely it changed a lot. The people that I'm around now, I feel they're very uplifting to me, so I feel that now I have good people in my life, whereas before I was very much an outcast. I stayed to myself, and I did not go anywhere, do anything. Now I'm very happy because I have a lot of people that that are very supportive and always there for me. Other thing I wanted to talk about was because some people have asked me, and some people actually sent me messages anonymously on Tumblr. They were all a little bit different, but the main question that I had was, have you told your parents, and what did they say, how did they act? The answer is no, I have not told my parents. When will I tell them? Sometimes, I honestly, I don't know. Sometimes I feel like I want to tell them now, and there are other days when I feel like I can't do it. I'm trying to transfer schools very soon, so I'm thinking maybe after I transfer that I will tell them. And then there are other times when I feel like I should not tell them, at least for until I'm married or something like this. Honestly, I have no clue. I have tried to drop hints, and I think they have an idea about me being Muslim, but I think that I think part of it is that they don't want to hear it. And I definitely understand this because I know the way they look at Muslims, and I don't blame them, especially with the media and things like this. So I've tried to slowly talk to them, and I would give this advice to anybody else who is out there like myself, who's trying to slowly show your parents a little bit about Islam. Never argue angrily. And I would say not even to argue, but if you're that person that cannot stand, because sometimes I feel like I can't let it go, I have to say something. So if you're that person that can't resist to argue, I would say just no matter what, don't do it out of anger. No matter what they say, no matter if they curse you or if they curse the religion, I know that's very bad, but so do your best to have patience with them. That is something extremely important, but try to brush up on your history. try to even statistics, and I've watched a lot of videos, and I know that that's not really the best education that you can get about Islam from that, but read the Quran and just learn from that. I would say don't try to learn it. I would say that I have been very lucky that I have met very good Muslims who have been good teachers, but sometimes they're not always the best people to learn from. There are some people who are out there that are not as religious as others, and some, are very, unfortunately, very, I don't want to say, I don't know how to say this other than say westernized. They're very, got caught up in the Western culture with drinking and partying and dating and things like this, and this is not Islamic at all. So be careful with who you follow or learn from. The best person, of course, is to learn from the prophets and the Quran and listen what Allah tells you. But if you're going to talk with your parents about Islam, I would say use something that they can relate to. Me, when I try to talk to people about Islam and they have questions for me, I don't always say, I don't always say, Jesus. I sometimes try to say,
out of area.
Excuse me. So yeah, where were we? Again, I would try to relate to people a little bit. I don't necessarily say Isa when I'm talking about Jesus. I say Jesus, even though that's the names and terms we use for him in the Quran. I do try to say, terms that people feel a bit more comfortable with, because when you start coming off with words that people are not so familiar with, I notice it does kind of freak people out. And even me, it took me actually even a while after I became Muslim. I felt a little bit uneasy calling, Jesus Isa. I still said Jesus for a long time, and it's only now that I'm very comfortable with those terms. But I would say that the best way to show the real Islam is by following, the Quran, the Sunnah, what Allah tells you. Most importantly, I think it's important to be at peace with yourself. I feel that it's only now that I'm very much at peace with my heart, and that is the best blessing that I've gotten from being Muslim. So thank you all for your questions. I'm going to try to do some more videos in the future when I have time. I'm not always at the house by myself. So, but if you guys like this video, leave me a comment and I will try to do videos in the near future.